And so when you started, you said, hey, I want to do something that doesn't bore me. And I think that's how a lot of entrepreneurs feel. Like, hey, here's something I'm passionate about. Here's something that I want to pursue. That's fantastic. You take the leap. What are like some of the top things that you realized real quick you had no idea about?
When you're driven, the need to accomplish a goal is relentless. Hard work and ambition compel you to do whatever's necessary. In my work as a personal injury trial lawyer for 18 years, it's common to meet driven people. Those with drive can have different personalities, careers, or backgrounds, but they possess one common factor. Despite their passions, driven people want to surround and motivate themselves with other driven people. If you want to learn how to overcome obstacles by learning from others, then tune in here. This is the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 48 of the Driven Crowd Podcast, fueled by Snellings Law. I'm your host, Scott Snellings. Today, we have a special guest joining us all the way from down under, my friend, Pete Mack. Pete is a fellow entrepreneur, as well as a speaker, author, coach, sports mentor, and expert marketer. He's the founder of Thinking Man Business Labs, which offers coaching and mentoring services for businesses. He's also the author of the best-selling book, The Intrinsic Money Solution, the proven methods for changing the mindset that is keeping you broke. If that wasn't enough, he's also the New South Wales Business Development Manager for the CGU Insurance, a co-chair of the Illawarra Shoalhaven Suicide Prevention Collaborative, and a committee member of the Australian Marketing Institute. Pete, welcome to the Driven Crowd Podcast, bud.
Wow, I've never had my profile read out like that. Thank you very much, mate. I appreciate that. And sometimes, unless someone says it to you, sometimes you do forget what you've done. And yeah, I appreciate that intro. Thanks for having me on, mate.
Absolutely, my friend. And so I think that's a great point there, though. A lot of times we get so focused on where we're headed that, one, we don't stop to celebrate the victories, and two, we never really look back on how far we've come. I know I'm guilty of that. There's a fantastic book, The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan. I don't know if you've read that, Pete.
I haven't read that one, no.
Yeah, definitely. I'll tell you what, I will send you that book with your gifts for being a guest on the podcast. It's a fantastic book, but it really goes towards that very thing of, if we're always kind of chasing the next thing, then why are we doing what we're doing? Because we're never really celebrating what we've accomplished and the people that we've accomplished it with.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing way and perspective to look at things. And like I said, I just had a Yahoo moment just then when you introduced me like that, because I'm normally the person interviewing, not the other way around. So yeah, when you said that, and considering some of the obstacles I've had along the way, be it divorce, normal life stuff that everybody else goes through, you sort of do need to give yourself that pat on the back, because a lot of the times in Australia, we've got that tall poppy sort of syndrome sometimes, where people won't give you that pat on the back. And sometimes we need to do that ourselves, and actually be proud of what we've done. And as entrepreneurs, very rarely do we do that, because it's sort of, if we stop, maybe we're going to get stuck. We sort of feel momentum's such a big thing in what we do, right? And if we stop, maybe we'll think that's enough, but it's actually not. And some of the stuff that when you've talked through, I was probably doing that at 30% after a divorce and things like that. So I'm actually quite proud of some of those things that you've actually said. So thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate it. It's going to be a good day.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The momentum that you just talked about is real. That is the real thing. And you talk to any entrepreneur and they immediately know exactly what you're talking about, because we know what it's like to not have the momentum. And once you get it, it's like a sport, right? When you're coming back and you've scored 3 goals in a row at a hockey game, the last thing you want is for the other team to grab that momentum, to take a penalty or to score against you. And when you lose it, you feel just like, oh my gosh, I've done so much work to get it. How do I get it back? And I think that's what we run into as entrepreneurs, is we end up driving ourselves into exhaustion because we don't want to lose that momentum.
Yeah, that's such and I've learned that the hard way, unfortunately. Where in my mid-30s, I did have a sort of a mental breakdown. You could call it that, and it was from chasing that momentum, chasing that high. Although some would consider it a healthy high, probably better than drinking or taking drugs and all that sort of stuff, but it still can be can be counterproductive to your health if you don't have someone checking you in, whether it's a wife or a really good friend, or somebody that says, maybe just take a week off. God, it's going to be there when you get back. Or I've got friends that get writer's block because they put so much pressure on themselves for that second book or third book or whatever it is. So I think that's quite real, but also we've got to be quite honest with ourselves when we are burning out and not pushing ourselves when we've only got 5% left in the tank, and maybe we should leave that for our families and for our loved ones sometimes.
Absolutely. I have a business coach. He was a guest several episodes back. We're at episode 48, Pete, so I don't remember all of them anymore at this point.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you. The Charlie Mann episode, he's my business coach. I don't think we talked about this on there, but one of the things that he really, really encouraged me to do was to take one day each month as just a day off. No specific instructions, just you got to take a day off. It can be a day where you're just catching up on stuff at the home front that you need to. It can be a day where you go do something that really fills your cup. You know, like if you're into hiking, go hike that day. If you're into running, go run that day, whatever it is. But having that one day each month where it's already on the calendar and you're forced to go take that day off and hopefully plan for it. But that's almost a reflective day. And do you ever do anything like that?
Yeah, I try to. I think there's a point in time where you start. There's a really fine line for me that I should start doing. That's a really great tip. But also, there's a really fine line between what we do and then losing yourself in there and losing passion for those things that we have, whether it's swimming, surfing, whatever it might be. Golf for me now as I get older because it's less stringent on the body at times. And at certain points in time, as we were growing up, we had so many passions and so many things that we wanted to do and things outside of work. And then once you become an entrepreneur, it's almost like an addiction within itself, right? And you'd understand that. And then, like you said, you've got to take a step back to take that day off. But then it's got to be something that you really enjoy. And I think as you get older, for us, like I don't think I'll ever retire. I've said this to many people. And people sometimes don't look at entrepreneurship as a job anyway. It's like, oh, you're doing something fun, so you're never going to... It's still hard work, right, to get things done. It's still hard work to get things done. But at the end of the day, I think I've really failed, and I think that's going to be a big goal for me in the next 12 months, is to ignite some of these other passions that I've had my whole life, whether it was playing a bit of cricket or getting my mates together for a barbecue, and some of the things that you ignored that you just think are going to be around forever. But igniting those passions again and doing it one day a month is such a great way to continue to have that fire for that, because at a point in time we might need that for a week if we burn out, or 2 weeks, or whatever it might be, right? Because we need something to go back to that's going to be able to ignite our fire again. And as entrepreneurs, sometimes we forget what it is. For me, sometimes it might be, it might be having a chat with God, or it might be something else to just help me get through the day. But we also do need these hobbies that help us get through it and spend time with our kids and show our kids that it's not just about work if they don't want to be an entrepreneur like us. Yeah.
Hey, absolutely. One of the discussions that I've had with my wife, Sarah, over probably the last few years is, hey, what am I into? What am I passionate about? Because you spend so much time, effort, and energy in the business and in things that surround the business, relationship development or thinking through systems and operations and all of those different things, that you come home from that, or you stop doing that and you have your family and you spend time with them. But then when you have a free minute, like, okay, I have time to enjoy a hobby, if you will. Well, I don't know what to enjoy, Pete. Like, I've forgotten what I'm into. And so that's a big issue.
Man. Thank you. It's not just me. It's not just me. Now I don't feel like an alien. So cool. But yeah, we get so entrenched in what it is that we're doing. And you remember 20 years ago when we first met, we had so many different hobbies. We'd find something to do. If we didn't know what we were doing at 7 a.m. by 8 a.m., we knew what we were doing. And we sort of lose that sort of childlike playfulness. And I think, sometimes whether you get grandchildren or whether you get nieces or nephews, you can really learn from the from the birth, and then their ability to just have fun by kicking a soccer ball around or whatever, and I take so much gratitude when I'm playing with my nieces, because they fill me with this innocence that I feel like sometimes corporate or jobs or responsibilities or all that, so whatever you want to call it, can take away from you if we're not self-aware about it.
And I think, crazy enough, one of the greatest things to come out of Australia, of course, other than Pete Mack, is the show Bluey, right? That is huge here in the States.
Is it really?
Yes, absolutely. And my kids, every time they release Bluey, there's like 50 episodes. Now they're all, 5 to 7 minutes long, but each of them has this amazing little life lesson rolled up in it. And we'll sit there and watch that for hours. And so, anytime we have some downtime and the kids are like, oh, let's watch something, I always suggest Bluey. I'm like, hey, let's watch Bluey. We've seen all the episodes, 20 times, but they have those important life points. And one of them was about finding that childlike joy for play. I mean, that's kind of the premise of the whole thing, right? You have the mom and the dad, and they're constantly playing with the kids. It makes the rest of us parents feel terrible, by the way. But no, that's kind of what they're doing, is they're showing you like, hey, find that innocence, find that just play. In Frisco, where I am, they have a Play Frisco. Right? Get out and just do something fun. And I think we lose that as entrepreneurs, especially when we're just so focused on trying to grow a business. And it kind of starts at the roots where you just have to be that focused. When you're first starting, there is no, oh, I have all this free time over here, I'll go do this. Like, you have to have 100% in to get the thing off the ground and running. But then that never kind of stops. And at some point you have to, or you will just crash and burn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think Bluey is a great example, whatever the TV show is, or what's our other famous Australian show over there, probably The Wiggles, that you might see. And it's just great watching that innocence of children. And then upon self-reflection, sometimes I used to just take 5 seconds just to look around, just to see how beautiful my son could just watch TV and just watch TV. It was just so cool to see. Now when even if he's just on his computer, he's just on his computer. Like, sometimes I'll sneak into his bedroom at night and see how freely he's sleeping. Whereas if you see me sleep, I'm rolling around all night, or I've got a podcast going halfway through, and then I'll put an Audible book on halfway through, just for some white noise so I can sleep. So that's how far we've come in as society. But just to go back on your point, Scotty, around entrepreneurship and what we do, like, we've done this to be creative and try and not be, we're obviously not the norm in our respective fields. We're trying to do something that's going to add to the field and grow the field, not because we feel like we're better, but we feel like change is needed in our respective professions. And I think the irony in all this is that the thing that drove us to be entrepreneurs, which is that kid-like feeling to disrupt industry and think outside the box. And I'm sure you say this to your staff always, it doesn't matter if we break it this week, it's going to be okay, So we're giving that to our staff sometimes, but we don't give it to ourselves. And sometimes we have to give it to ourselves.
Yeah, we really do. And that's one of my favorite parts, is when we have our IDS sessions. We run on EOS. I don't know if you have EOS over there. You're familiar with the book Traction. But we have meetings every week, and that's where we find problems and fix them. And sometimes we create more problems when we fix it, and then we fix those problems. And nothing is sacred. Anything and everything can be changed. And to me, like, that's the most fun part, is, okay, it's working really good now. How do we make it work even better? And if that means tearing it all down and rebuilding it in a different way, great, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean by the irony in it. So when we go home, why can't we break stuff? Do you know what I mean? Jump in the pool and be a kid and do a bomb and whatever, in the pool and I think we have to think it as adults, because we're trying to obviously set an example for our children and all that sort of stuff. But sometimes that example might be, hey, that can be silly too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So Pete, we jumped right in. I didn't get any background on you. We just jumped right into the serious stuff. So You and I met back when I was in law school, and I took a study abroad program in Sydney, Australia, where I studied comparative con law. I hadn't even taken American con law yet in law school, so that was quite the semester for me abroad. But we met there, and back in those days, you were commuting into Sydney downtown, working the 9 to 5, and other than hanging out with us, seemed to not be too high on life at that point. So, what were you doing back then? And just kind of give us a brief history of how you've gotten to where you are today.
Look, I mean, you remember me back then. I guess it was always about smiling, having fun, making sure everybody else that was around me having fun. And I think I took that into my corporate world. And corporate back then was always suits and a tie. And as we know, things have changed. Some people get, depending on the day, you can go to work in a pair of t-shirts and jeans these days, and people are working from home. And I was doing that way before COVID. So I guess even from back then, I wanted my team to have fun. I wanted to be one of those bosses, and I'll never forget that story. I can't remember what time we came home, but without divulging too much. But and then the next day I went to work, and I came home and I said, I got a promotion today, and I can't remember. I'll never forget the faces on you, Colin, and the other boys. Said, "How did you get a promotion? You got home at this time. You went to work at this time." It was because I was able to recalibrate and focus every single time I went back to work, which is a good time in life, because it was almost, I was scar free back then. You know what I mean? It was like at that age in your 20s, you're sort of scar free. So there's jobs around. You've got your uni degree under your belt. You've got the skills. Do you want that fear factor? You don't have the responsibility of families or house or mortgages sort of at that age. So you're almost running your own natural self. And I think I would have been even more successful if I let more of my natural self out over time. And I feel like I've done myself a disservice. And I think we all do sometimes, because they're the gifts that we've been given, and they're our strongest gift, is our natural self. And yes, we can get better by reading books and all that sort of stuff, and I love that. But I always say to people, don't lose yourself in the book. Find yourself in that book. So there might be 7 chapters and you agree with 6 of them. Okay, how do you fit into those chapters? Not just verbatim copy those 6 chapters and adapt those 6 chapters, because it's going to be different depending on what leadership type you have, what leadership group you have in your company, and even under that, what people you have actually doing the nuts and bolts of things. And you need to adapt to that, because all that within your business. If we're reading any self-help book, any business book, I always say never take it verbatim, because every business is different, and the way you apply that is the magic that you bring.
And I think trial lawyers are a fantastic example of what you're just talking about. I think one of the hardest things for a young trial lawyer who is trying to grow, trying to learn his or her craft and get up there and start trying cases in front of a jury is to be themselves. Because we've learned how to do various things from either different professors or mentors. We've read books from the greats. We've seen a whole bunch of movies and TV shows of how they do it in Hollywood. And so trying to take the knowledge base of what those people have learned and how they communicate, but yet craft it to where it's you communicating with the jury and not you trying to be someone else communicating to the jury is so hard, Pete. It is so hard. And so for you had great success being, I believe, what you called your natural self. What roadblocks started coming up to where you had to kind of hide a little bit more, Pete, every day and start being someone else?
Yeah, as I went up the ranks within corporate, that's sort of what happens. You have to, at that point, you sort of have to play a corporate game and, wear the suit. And, up until 3 weeks ago, if you remember some of the stuff we said on, my hair was sort of down to here. I got back in corporate and I thought I'd cut my hair and then I cut my hair, and one of the EMs go, "Why'd you cut your hair? You didn't need to cut your hair. Things have changed." So I mean, I guess that's a sort of primal example. Things have changed obviously since then, but as you get up the corporate ladder, obviously there are less and less positions, and then and especially there's a lot more responsibility around what we need to do from a perspective of, especially in insurance, you'd know that field very well. But we need to be on the ball. And some of that sort of stuff is black and white. So there is not much room for creativity apart from maybe systems or how we speak to our clients and how honest we are with our clients and things like that, right? In relation to, not that we're not honest, but what I'm saying is if a claim's going to take 6 months, let's tell them it's going to take 6 months, rather than say call us next week and then they call next week and it's a waste of everybody's time.
All right.
And sometimes I ran into some, I guess that's a very specific example, but I guess my point is, in my life as an entrepreneur, I'd be like trying to figure out ways of enhancing that rather than just going with the norm. But sometimes in different corporate environments, you don't, and especially how big the company is. The insurer I work for is one of the biggest insurers, if not the biggest insurer in Australia. So there's rules, and you have to follow that. And sometimes for people like us, it's hard.
All right. So you were in corporate back when we first met. How long did you remain in corporate before you decided, hey, I got this idea, I'm going to jump ship and go start my own thing?
Till a breakdown.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So started having massive anxiety attacks. Delivering really great projects still, I think, and then asked for a couple of weeks off, and that was before there was a lot of discussion around mental health. And I won't mention the company; they did a great job in trying to help me through it and things like that. But I was burnt out at 34, and that's a young age to be burnt out, I think. But I got a lot of great life lessons out of that. So if you remember, I ran my own sort of rock magazine after that, which is called Rockosphere. So toured around with bands like Kiss and Metallica and stuff like that. So got my midlife crisis out of the way. But also learned a lot that, hey, I didn't even know this industry. And now I've got a magazine, I've got writers, I've got photographers, I've got a platform. I'm selling advertising. So it's also helped me in other areas. So, at the intro where we said what we've achieved, I've never even looked at it like that. I didn't know anybody in the industry. It was an industry that I was passionate about. I like photography, so I just blended those and created a business around it. And that's, although it wasn't the most lucrative business that I've ever been a part of, it was something that showed me what I can do and something that I can show my son one day what I achieved and who I worked with, because these guys that I worked with will always be classic rock bands. So it's something that I'm quite proud of, and the following we got when we closed down and things like that in a 3-year period was just amazing. So I did that for a little while, and then I got into coaching after that, being manager, and I sort of did coaching for about 10 years after that, and then just did consulting and started working on boards and things like that as well.
So going from corporate to starting a rock magazine, that's a pretty big jump, even for you, Pete.
Right.
Even for you.
Yes.
And so when you decided, hey, I'm going to go start a magazine. I mean, magazines, you walk into any airport and you see just all of the different kinds of magazines, and then a very specific rock magazine. It's, you're out there competing with Rolling Stone and the big ones out there like that. What made you think you could do that?
I guess the first one was boredom. So I wanted to do something that I wasn't bored doing. And I know I wouldn't be bored doing anything rock related or photography related. So I started by myself, just going to gigs. I knew that I could write. Really good EDMs even back then, before it was a cool term to use. And I could actually get to the promoters. So, every for anyone wanting to do this, every every brand, every single promoter, every band has somebody that looks after their their media appearances. So I would just send email after email after email, and I was like a dog with a bone. And the first one I got was a place where there was seven people watching a local band. I don't even know who their names are now. They never made it, but they were passionate, and they got me started. And that promoter had bigger bands and bigger bands and bigger bands. And so I just progressed up through that, and then started going around the universities around here with, the Sydney University and all that sort of stuff, and started putting up those. You remember those things where you could rip off phone numbers? Call me if you want to interview a band, or if you want to photograph at a gig. So I started building, even though I didn't have the content yet, I started building my base of how the staff would work. So for them, it was about getting published and getting a portfolio for when they graduate from journalism school. And for me, it was about getting content for my site at that point in time. And it worked really well because I could do concerts all around Australia now, because every university was involved. And it started from there. And some of those guys are still working in the industry, still text me to this day saying thank you for the start. And I really did nothing. I mean, I got some free work out of them. They got to meet some of their idols at the same time, and got some really good portfolio work. And that's what made that work really well. So that was my first sort of journey into that space of sort of entrepreneurship, knowing that I can do that.
And so when you started, you said, hey, I want to do something that doesn't bore me. And I think that's how a lot of entrepreneurs feel. Hey, here's something I'm passionate about. Here's something that I want to pursue. That's fantastic. You take the leap. What are like some of the top things that you realized real quick you had no idea about?
No idea about how quickly the bank account will get drained. So you're right. You have to work fast. You have to believe in yourself and actually trust your staff. Even though they weren't staff that were on the books, I guess, you have to trust their passion, and you also have to show them that you're in it to also help them as well on their path. So to me, it was like a journey for them. It was, they're at university. We're gonna build your portfolio. So by the time you graduate, you're gonna have an undeniable portfolio that whatever magazine you go for, you're gonna get that job. Because Rockosphere is so niche. Which, I mean, it was done by design. I wanted to get into something that was niche. That when I got the advertising dollars, it was specific. So if Motley Crue released an album, their promoter would come to us because they knew that our audience was totally dedicated to this part of the music industry. And at that time in Australia, there wasn't many guys doing that. So I think clarity around what your proposition is to your promoter or whoever you're working for. Don't try and be everybody to everybody. Like, I know that's always said, but don't try and be everyone to everyone, and do something that, like I said, that you're passionate and that you know about. So I've been a tragic for rock music for a long time, so I knew bits and pieces around the industry, around what the bands wanted to do, where they were going, and I designed my profile around making sure that I was servicing their fans the best way that I could. And because I was a fan, I was able to do that easier than something that I didn't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you brought up a massive point there of, with trusting your team, they've got to know that you have their back, that this isn't just the Pete show, that Pete is all in just for Pete. They got to know that, hey, Pete wants me to grow. Pete has my back if something goes wrong. Pete has my best interests in mind. And I think that is where a ton of people just go wrong. The entrepreneur gets so fired up about the business. They have this vision and they're driving it forward, but they don't let anybody else on the bus. It's all about them. It's all about their vision. Nobody else has any input on any part of the business, and they expect them to be as passionate about it as they are. And that just doesn't happen.
And it's so true. It's also like, I remember even my friends saying sometimes we'd get invited to concerts that might have been just outside of our niche or close, but there'd be some big bands. I remember Bryan Adams came and all my friends would be like, Pete, why aren't you doing that gig yourself? I said, because my staff are the ones that are doing the hard work, even though, like I said, technically not my staff. But for me to prove to them that they're part of my vision and I'm looking after them at the same time. If I took all the big gigs, I wouldn't have had anybody working for me. I took all the crappy gigs where there was like 10 people. And then if we had KIST and they specifically requested me, I'd always bring somebody else with me, so that they could have that as part of their portfolio, So, and then there was buy-in, because it's like Pete's not just cherry picking the gigs just so he looks good,
Right. Yeah, I think another huge point that you brought up too is finding your niche. Finding that one area where you really, really excel and not trying to be everything to everyone. Back in the day, and you still find this in a lot of small towns, lawyers are kind of what we refer to as door lawyers, meaning if it walks in the door, we can help them. And that means that you got to know like every different kind of law, from real estate to wills to probate to personal injury to family, you name it, criminal. And I think that was fine for a long time, but now the more concentrated you can get, the more kind of niche down, as we say, you can get and really dive into that and be the go-to, man, that makes such a huge difference. And you focusing mainly on, 80s hair bands and bands similar to that, that's pretty niche right there.
Yeah, that is. And I mean, it's the same for law. I think in general, society has really got to that point. They want specialists for everything. So if it's a financial planner, it's a financial planner, but you get your mortgage from somebody else and you get your tax done somewhere else and all that sort of stuff, right? Whereas back in the day, financial planner would probably do everything for you, and if you've got a different tax structure, depending on business you have, everybody wants the specialist. And these days people are willing to pay because they know if they pay double, they're probably going to get a triple better return because that person is a specialist in that area. And it's the same thing. Even I'm learning that with insurance, coming back into that now. It's what we do in Australia. I was talking to you this about the other day, just on WhatsApp, mate, around how far ahead we are. And I don't know if it's because of society or because of our, we don't have the let's go straight to a lawyer sort of thing in Australia. It's like, let's try and sort it out with the insurance company first. Then we go through the ombudsman, and then finally it goes through to a lawyer. So our goal is to try and sort of knock things over as quick as possible, and then that differentiates us as an insurer from the next insurer at a claims proposition level, not just at a product and price level. So, and I think that's the same for any business that we're in. So pricing is one thing. You might be the most expensive, but you're the best, so you'll get a better outcome, hopefully, and then people know you for that.
Yeah, and we almost had several personal injury incidents over in Australia because I could never remember that cars were on the wrong side of the street. And so Pete had to stop me a few times from stepping into the street right in front of a car because I was looking the wrong way. And in fact, in Australia, I guess it's quite a problem because they say, look left on the curbs, because Americans and people who drive on the right side of the street are always looking on the wrong side of the street for oncoming traffic and get hit. So thank you for that, Pete. I appreciate you saving my life multiple times.
Because of people like you, now we say look both ways. So it's fine.
Yes, look both ways, because the Americans, especially the Texans.
Yeah, that's right. And Australia does exist. I saw a funny conspiracy theory the other day where someone was saying Australia doesn't exist, but both Scotty and I can say that Australia does exist.
Yes, it does exist. It does. And it's beautiful and it's amazing and it's full of amazing people. All right. So you are a best-selling author, and the Intrinsic Money Solution, I'll hold it up here. It's available on Amazon. I brought my copy up here actually, and it's a little ratty and dog-eared and whatnot from the couple of times that I've read it. Why a book, Pete? Why'd you decide? Because that is no small effort. I mean, it is a 150-ish page book. No small effort there. Why'd you decide to write a book? What'd you have to say?
I guess I was really at a point where I did have a bit of time when I was writing it. I was struggling after a divorce, which you know about as well. So, and I just wanted to write something that helped some of the, because it's not really designed for people that are well off. Although there's some real good tactics there for everybody to go back to basics, but it's also for people that have either been brought up in an environment where they've been told they're never gonna make it. Like, my history. My parents immigrated here in the '60s. I had a great upbringing, but we never had a lot of money, and I was the first one to go to university out of my family. So I guess I wanted just to show some basics that you can break cycles within families. So the money stuff is just an outcome of good behaviors and consistent behaviors to get you where you want to go. That's why I sort of never have feared not having money, because we're lucky to live in countries like Australia and America, both you and I, that there's always opportunity to make money if you follow certain steps and do it the right way. And it sort of doesn't matter for you. I always say, making money, it doesn't matter about the color of your skin or where you come from or what you do. You can always make money if you find, like I said, your niche, what you're passionate about, what you want to do, and get it. And that's what it's all about. Just almost putting exercises in there to just get people thinking in that mindset, rather than the mindset then, okay, the social security check's going to come in this month or next month and we'll be fine and we'll survive. Yeah, you will survive, but are you having fun? Are you feeling depressed? Are you not well? This will give you a sense of purpose in life. So, the money part in there is sort of just a genuine outcome of good behaviors around trying to do something that you're passionate about and what you want to do. And I'm not saying everyone that does it will be successful. It's just that if you're not successful, at least you know that you can do something, and then the second time you might be successful, the third time or the fourth time. We know what it's like. It's not always our first attempt at the best one. And I've got that comment where if you're not embarrassed of your first try, I'm a little bit embarrassed about some of the stuff that I wrote in the book, but I'm like, oh, I got it out there. So if you're not embarrassed of your first try, then you were too late, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You waited too long.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
And that's what I always am with stuff in business.
Yeah. Your first time, you should always fall on your face, right? Because you're getting started.
Yeah.
So once again, the Intrinsic Money Solution, great book, really more of a mindset book than a money book, as Pete said. And speaking of books, Pete, we're almost out of time. So I got to ask you, give me your top 3 books.
Always liked Malcolm Gladwell's books. I'm also a fan of The Alchemist by Paul Coelho.
Oh, I just listened to that book. Amazing.
Yeah, I love that, and also Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life. I've loved Jordan Peterson for a long time, and love all of his stuff. So for me, it's more motivational stuff, I guess, because I can get in my own head a lot, just like most of us entrepreneurs can get in our own head. And then coming back to basics with some of these rules that can get us out of our space really helps us, I believe.
Awesome. Well, Pete, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for getting up super early in the morning for you to join us here on the Driven Crowd podcast.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic to see you, friend.
Yeah, great to see you, mate, and hopefully I'll get to see you down here one day soon.
All right, and thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Driven Crowd podcast. We'll see you next time.